Hey, my friend, welcome to another episode of Coroner Talk. It's going to be a great episode today with a conversation I'm going to have with Wendy Kipple. I know that you have heard her before on the show. She comes out of Colorado, and she is a great guest, probably the closest to a co-host that we have, and will eventually probably be co-host. It's just we've got to kind of maintain where we're at here and can get on a good schedule with all the traveling. As you might have noticed, we are on a twice-a-month schedule. Every other week, you're going to have a new episode, and there will be some thrown in addition to that as bonuses. So we're going to be able to maintain that schedule. We do believe with the training schedules and stuff that myself and Wendy and others are having to deal with. But today we're going to talk about survivor support programs. Does your office, does your coroner or medical examiner office have a survivor support program similar to a victim advocate? Many police departments, sheriff's departments, prosecuting attorneys' offices, things like that have a victim advocate, but many coroner's offices and medical examiner offices are now starting a survivor support program, and these folks are coming out with investigators and are working with families. It is really an interesting concept. I hope to do it in my county as well soon, and Wendy and I talk about that at length and kind of how the program works and some of the best practices of getting a program like this set up, if in fact you want to. So without any further delay, let's jump into that conversation I had with Wendy on survivor support programs.
Adjust your earbuds, turn up those speakers, and hang on. It's now time for this week's featured conversation.
All right, Wendy, welcome to the show again.
Good to see you again, Darren.
So it's late summer-ish here, and it's been hot, and you're out there in the cool weather. And so what is your temperature in September in Colorado right now?
It's usually average about 60s, low 60s.
Yeah. And you're up there with no oxygen.
Yep, oxygen.
You guys have no oxygen up there, so... Yeah. And of course, it hasn't been that long ago. You and I was in Vegas together at the International Coroners Association conference, and It was 115 one day. Now, how do you come off the mountain to 115 degrees Vegas and survive it?
I was wilting.
Good thing that hotel had really good air conditioning.
Yes. In fact, they kept the room where the conference was so cold that I kept thinking I needed to go get a jacket.
And that's cold if you said that.
Yeah,
for sure. Well, I'm glad to have you back on the show. It's now that we're back up and running, and I'm glad that you're back on. And I kind of pre-introduced this topic just a little bit, but it's a very interesting topic that more and more offices are doing. And I kind of want to just give the mic over to you for a little bit and talk about how your office works with these victim advocacies, people within your own office, because some use sheriff's departments, some coroner's offices, medical examiner's offices just don't get into it at all. And then I got some other ideas and bounce off you in a minute. But take a few minutes here and just talk about what the victim advocacy program looks like for your office, how much is staffed, what do they do, how does the program work, and let's just get to understand that a little bit, and then we'll peel some more away from that.
All right. So we started what we call our survivor support program. We started that in 2016. That was the idea of Regan Wood, our coroner. And what happened was in the old days, basically, when I was started in the coroner's office, if we needed somebody on scene of a death for the family members or witnesses or anybody, we would call victims advocates. In 2016, it might have been late 2015, early 2016, the victims advocates here in Summit County in Colorado decided that they were no longer going to respond to the scene of a death because their victims advocates were uncomfortable, number one, with going to a death scene. And secondly, they said that death scenes really didn't qualify, especially if it was a natural death, it didn't involve a crime, that it didn't qualify as a role for a victim's advocate. So unless there's a crime involved, they said, we won't respond. So we saw a need that we needed that assistance on scenes, because a lot of times when you get to a scene, families, witnesses, friends, roommates, whoever are upset, they're traumatized. And instead of taking away from our time from doing a scene investigation, investigating the death, we would be pulled away and have to deal with the family or with the friends or roommates or whoever was on scene, get things calmed down, and then go back to our investigation. So Regan, who's our coroner, before she became the coroner, she was the director of victims advocates here in Summit County. And she said, let's just start our own. So we called it the Survivor Support Program. And we got a team of people that came together, and they respond to the scenes, and they help the victims or the family members and friends and roommates and or witnesses who are traumatized by a death. And they help them with getting through that first little bit with the grief and the trauma, get them resources to help them further once everything's kind of calmed down and the scene is closed down. Then they can help them get resources as far as help them figure out, what do we do for a funeral? Because the biggest question is, what next? They don't know what to do. Everybody without exception says, well, I've never been through this. What do I do? Where do we go from here? And this is a big tourist area. So a lot of our deaths are of people that come up here to recreate, to go skiing, to go hiking. And for one reason or another, if they end up dying, the family's like, how do I get them home? What do we do? Or if they die like in the condo or the hotel room that they're renting, if they're uncomfortable staying there, then our survivor support people will help them get another room or go to another hotel or condo. They'll help them secure transportation back to the airport if they need help with that, returning rental cars, making arrangements to get their stuff shipped back home, or to get the funeral home helps with transporting the decedent back out of state. But they just help them with all of those resources. And they're also just support to be there, to make sure that they're taking care of themselves, that they're drinking, that they're breathing, that they're just going through the grief process, and help them take care of themselves so that they can continue on and start kind of going through that process and think what they need to do, what are the next steps, and so that they can think more clearly about what needs to be done.
Well, so let me stop you there just for a second. I know that some of the programs that I've heard about concentrate more specifically just on suicide. I know Laramie County, Lamar County, Cheyenne, Wyoming. I probably don't. It's one of the two counties, Laramie County, I think. And I apologize to the.
It's Larimer County.
Larimer County. Cheyenne, Wyoming. So I know they have a program there as well, similar to this, but they do a big concentration on suicides as well, a suicide support group and things like that. They've got some good things going up there. So these are not investigators. These are separate people.
Right.
How many do you have?
Right now, I believe we have 5.
Okay. Are they all volunteer?
It's kind of, no, they're not volunteer. We initially, when we started the program, we said it was going to be a volunteer program, but then the county said, no, we have to pay them. So, but then they weren't going to give us the funding for it. So we do fundraisers to get the pay for our survivor support people, but they are paid.
Okay. I know Cheyenne does something similar because, for funding. I don't know all their funding and who gets paid and all that, but I know that for the program, they do raise money for maybe some salary, but certainly for materials and stuff. Don't know how it all goes, but they do if I understand it correctly, like a glow-in-the-dark dodgeball or glow-in-the-dark volleyball or something like that. And it's a big fundraiser. It's a big deal. They raise a lot of money. But that's one of those things where, when you said the county said, hey, we have to pay them, I thought, well, that's interesting. They're volunteered to give up money. No, they didn't volunteer to give it up. They just said, you can't make them work for free, but we ain't paying them is what they said.
Right,
yeah,
right.
Yeah.
And what we do, too, is we ask each of the towns within Summit County to kick in so much money, and we give them stats like at the end of the year. It's like, okay, this is how many deaths occurred in your town. How much money can you give us to keep our survivor support program going? We also get some grants. And then we do a fundraiser, like we're going to have a fundraiser in October. It's called the Ghouls Night Out. That it's getting close to Halloween. So we're going to have that fundraiser, and we have silent auctions, and we have a couple bands, and it's a big fundraiser. We usually get some pretty good money from that.
So what type of training do these people have?
They go through training with some of our foundation people that started in the program. They help them to understand, here's the dynamics of a death scene. Here's what the mental health issues are. And a lot of them have some kind of connection with mental health well-being or counseling when they come in to do this. Okay.
So they're exposed to death scenes. So they're going to, even though they're dealing with family, they're still likely that they're going to see some, if not all, of the death.
Yes.
A suicide or something. They're going to see that. So they understand that that's something. Do you have to then, I guess, because it's a program, you probably have some paperwork involved to say, hey, you're going to see a lot of death and destruction, sign off here. We're telling you right away, whatever. And, Okay. And so let's take a death. Let's just say that there was a ski accident, and that would be something in your area. And ski accident, person's dead. Family is, you are called to the scene. You go to the scene. Maybe the paramedics are there, let's just say, and it's at this resort. Do the support team, the victim support team, go with you then? I mean, do they arrive pretty well at the same time? How are they called out? How they arrive?
It kind of depends on the death. On like a skier death, a lot of times the decedent is either at the clinic at the bottom of the ski mountain, or they've been transported to the hospital emergency room, and that's where the family is going to be. So the survivor support personnel will go wherever and usually the family's there with the body, and a lot of times they're in the room with the body. So we'll ask them to step out so that I can do my investigation of the body, and the survivor support person will take the family outside into another room. And the ski areas are usually really good about having one of their personnel assisting. They'll get a room set aside for them to go into to grieve and just have some privacy. And the survivor support person will get information from the family as well that I need for my investigative forms.
All right,
and they'll help them with making sure that they are eating, they're drinking, they're doing okay.
Yes. And that's a good idea too, where they're not doing a lot of investigation, but you still need next of kin information, home address. It could be Colorado, it could be Tennessee, those type of things, the family dynamics, maybe even a little bit of medical history. I guess you could have them give them a form to fill out that they're talking to the family. Sometimes families don't like to talk, but I have found though, even though we have to ask these questions and we say, I know you don't want to I know right now you don't want to talk, but in the end, actually, when you get their mind concentrated on asking some of them questions, it's giving the family something to do, and they feel like they're involved and helpful in some way. And it's actually, most families feel a little relieved after we get the conversation going, because it's more of a conversation than just, question A, question B. And so your survivor group support team, they certainly know how to do that probably better. Does this team help with with death notifications?
Yes, they will. They will help with death notifications. Usually we do it, the investigators do it, just because we know more of the details that the family is going to ask about, especially if it's for for somebody that's out of state or out of our county that we can't go see personally, but they will help try to track down family or somebody if we need the help.
So let's just say it's a local issue. Somebody's died locally and you have to go to a house in a certain town. Mm-hmm. Do you take one of those folks with you when you go make the notification?
Yes. Yes, okay. We do.
That's a couple of things. That makes two people, we always want two people on a notification. That gives you those two people. And then they're there to start the support services right away.
Right. Exactly. Okay. And if we do a death notification, if it's, say, a death, another jurisdiction contacts us and said, hey, we need you to go do an in-person notification for a death that we had in our county, but the family is there. And the investigator and a survivor support person will go, as well as I request that a law enforcement officer go, just because you never know
absolutely
how they're going to react. And you never know what you're walking into. I don't want one of my people at the coroner's office just walking into a situation that they have no idea what they're walking into, and it turns volatile pretty quickly.
Right. So in our office, and we're in a little bit of a limbo because we're homeless, and some of our listeners know we're homeless in that our past coroner and where the office was and all that. Once he lost the election, the county lost access to all of that, and the county didn't follow our request and get that done ahead of time. So here we are. So we're like it's spread in 3 locations. We're out for bid. It looks like hopefully it'll start breaking ground by fall on the new morgue. However, the point about all that is we have a tough time now trying to get information to families and have a place for them to come and have a central location. So for us, it's probably going to be better once our new morgue is built. In the meantime, though, we have a book, and it is nothing that I invented. It's something that actually I've seen it out of Illinois coroners, Kentucky coroners, probably others. And it says common questions asked when a death occurs. And in there's a little blurb from me, my picture and a little blurb from me, wishing them well and what our office can do. That's the political part of it, Well, then it goes into actual, why is the coroner's office involved if it's a hospice death, or what should I do with this, or how do I get the property back? How do I get a death certificate? And all kinds of questions that people have asked. And and like I said, I didn't invent it, but I did add it and modify it. So although that is nothing like you're talking about, the point is we have that, and we also have some brochures and some booklets from the American Suicide Foundation. I think it's ASF. I think it is. Anyway, about survivor trauma and groups for survivors of suicide. We give those to suicide families. So we provide that kind of stuff. We're not to the point yet, because we're in homeless, of having a team of people, but that is something we certainly want to do. And I think there's some logistics to it, and this conversation here, of course, helps me as well. When I ask you about training, some of them come with some mental health backgrounds. But do you have a curriculum that you use? Is there something nationally that's kind of an approved program for this type of stuff?
Not necessarily, but we do have a book that we've created. It's not a very big book. I've got it right here. We've got our survivor support program booklet that we give to everybody when they join our team, and then we go through in-person trainings and just kind of scenarios of how you handle people. And then it's OJT, is they go out and they shadow another survivor support person for a while until they feel comfortable doing it. And of course, the investigators are always happy to help and answer questions as well. But we also have that pamphlet, the same type of pamphlet you just talked about, of common questions. And we'll give that to the families and their survivors on scene and tell them, hey, you know what? You've asked all these questions, but here's this pamphlet, because you're not going to remember 95% of what we say right now. Later on, you're going to go, well, what about this? I don't remember asking about it or getting an answer. So we provide that pamphlet as well to them.
So how are they called out? You said you have 5, and that fluctuates a little bit, but you have 5. And let's say is it different if it's 2 in the afternoon or 2 in the morning? I don't know. But you have a death and you contact. Who do you contact? How are they called out? What's the rotation schedule? That kind of stuff.
We have a rotation schedule. The survivor support personnel give one of our investigators also manages the survivor support end of our office, and she creates a schedule of who can work when, who can be on call when. It's basically an on-call schedule that mirrors our schedule.
Sure.
And they'll be on call for either a 12-hour period or a 24-hour period. And when we get paged out, then dispatch will also page out survivor support. They'll put that in the page that, hey, survivor support is also being requested by law enforcement on scene. And then they know that they need to respond as well. And usually we just meet them at the scene.
Okay. Yeah. They drive their own vehicle and you meet at the scene. So,
right.
So what about, is there a death they don't go out on? I mean, is it just like hospice? They wouldn't, right? Because hospice, those are normally phone notifications.
Right.
But if it's any type of death that an investigator goes to the scene, then the support team would go with you as well. But now, what about if it's, we had one just a couple days ago, a fetal demise. Now, in our county, I know fetal demises, some counties don't worry about fetal demises. We want to be notified, although most of the time on a fetal demise under 26 weeks, we decline jurisdiction unless there's been trauma or something like that. In this case, it was 22 weeks. The baby did live for 7 minutes, breathed on its own for 7 minutes at 22 weeks. That's interesting, but only for 7 minutes. But nonetheless, it was a placenta rupture, and there was no trauma. Mm-hmm. There was nothing like that. So it was just an accident thing. She'd had 2 other miscarriages. Anyway, my point is, there's a death that our office got involved in because the child actually lived for 7 minutes, but we didn't go to the hospital. But now, is that something similar like that? Or let's say it's an older person that's in the hospital that has died of something. Does your office then make a referral to the victim services people that then reaches out to that family at a later time? Or they're only involved with on-scene cases?
In the case of any hospital case, like a fetal demise would be in our hospital, or if somebody dies in our hospital, we have hospital chaplains that take care of them at the hospital. For a while there, we kind of went back and forth with the chaplain service at the hospital versus our people with the survivor support program on who handled that, and then the families felt like they were getting bombarded. So we just settled on, if it's in the hospital, the chaplain service will help those families, and unless there's not a chaplain available for some reason, then our survivor support people can step in and take care of them. Otherwise, it's and even cases where just somebody dies of natural causes, but it was unexpected. As we've talked about in prior episodes, we have high altitude deaths here quite frequently, and it's usually older people or people that aren't in the best of health come to high altitude. They end up dying. Family does not expect that. It's not really a traumatic death, but it's unexpected.
Right.
So, and the survivor support can be called out for that as well. It's dependent upon what the law enforcement on scene, if they say, hey, the family's kind of freaking out here a little bit or really upset, I think it would really help to have a survivor support person on scene as well. And sometimes they might get paged out a little bit after we do. Once things start developing, then they go, oh, you know what? We might need somebody else here to help us with family.
So what you're saying is, or you've said it a couple of times, and I think I'm getting that the law enforcement on the scene more times than not decides to bring those out. It's not your investigators that decide. Right.
And a lot of times if I get a page, I'm always requested by dispatch to call the law enforcement that's on scene. And so, or the hospital, depending on where the death is at. And one of my first questions to them is, do we need survivor support on scene? And they'll have me call the law enforcement officer on scene And I'll ask them, confirm with them, do we need survivor support or not? Because sometimes there's nobody there, just the decedent and law enforcement.
Okay. So let me stop you. So that answers part of that question, because my question was going to be, why wouldn't you have them there? I mean, even if a dead grandpa didn't wake up this morning, still, why don't we have them there? Maybe the family isn't in some type of a hyper vigilance turmoil situation, but still, grandpa died. But you're saying more times than not, they go to all death. But if it's just dead guy and cop, there's no family there at the time, so they're not needed. But then, once you
not on the scene,
yes. But then once you make identification and you know who grandpa is, then they reach out to the next of kin and start that kind of stuff, the support that they can give.
Right
after that.
Well, and usually I'll do the notification. The investigator does the notification, and if they're upset and they have a lot of questions, then we can direct them to one of our survivor support people to help them through all the next steps and questions, getting those questions answered. And a lot of times on scene, if the cop's there and there is family on scene, and at the moment nobody's traumatized or anything, I'll have the officer ask them, hey, do you want somebody here to help you, to support you, to answer questions, to get you through the next steps? And if they say, no, I don't want anybody, then we won't have somebody respond.
Okay.
But we will go ahead and give them the information to contact somebody later if they decide that they need assistance.
Yeah. And just me playing the devil's advocate part, again, I don't know what they get paid. Maybe, each call out costs more. I mean, there's all different dynamics. But to me, on the surface, and again, I like this episode because I'm asking all these questions because I have all these questions because we're developing it, but so does all the listeners out there. There's many other agencies out there that would like to have this. So hopefully my questions are also answering their questions. But to me, it would be, if I'm going to a call, I want my victim advocate person, my victim support to go with me or to meet me there. That way, maybe the family can tell them, like, we don't need anything. But to me, it would be like, okay, here's this investigator, but now here's our support. Here's the card, and they can ask them questions and help with the family and say, look, you don't need anything right now, but here's my card. Here's some booklets. I'm a phone call away. If you do decide tomorrow or the next day, you know what? You've got a little bit of a trip up here and you're not sure where to, I'm your guy. I'm your girl. So I've already met you.
Right.
So to me, it'd be nice to have that. Now they may not stay as long as me. I might be there meeting the family, doing my investigation. They may come in, meet the family, and the family like, look, we're good. This is prearranged. We don't need nothing. Blah blah. Okay, thank you. Here's my card. Call me if you need me. Look, I'm going to get out of your way. I'm sorry for your loss. They leave in 30 minutes. I'm there for 2 more hours.
Right.
But at least they've made contact. Right. So in some ways, that seems like at least they've got. Oh, and again, tomorrow, like, oh, what do I do about property? What do I do about whatever? Well, they, of course, have my card or they have my investigator's card, but they'd also have this victim support team card who would guide them on that.
Right. And we did for a while have all of our survivor support people come out, not all of them, but a survivor support person come on every call regardless if there was somebody there. And then if the family said, hey, nope, sorry, I don't need your help, then the survivor support person, more often than not, would help us on the scene and go back to the morgue with me and help take care of the body and do what we're doing because they were interested to see what happens.
Sure.
And we have actually, some of our survivor support people over the years have then turned into investigators.
Nice. Yes, that's very good.
So then they get an idea of what it entails, because a lot of times we get people say, hey, I want to be a death investigator, and have no idea what it entails.
Absolutely.
Until they get into it. And then they're like, oh, you know what? Maybe this isn't for me. With the survivor support, hiring them as a survivor support person, initially, they get an idea. They are on scene. They get an idea of what a death investigation entails, what we have to deal with and do. Then they can decide from there if it's for them or not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, exactly. And that's a good way to do it. The last couple investigators we hired, we started expanding here. We went through the hiring process and we felt comfortable that these people could handle it with some of their backgrounds. But one of them had no background in law enforcement, paramedic or anything. We did hire them, but one of the first things we did during the probationary period was like the third day, they were in autopsy. Because I'm like, look, no hard feelings. Okay, we got 14 days. You can back out and the paperwork ain't even filed. Ain't nobody gonna know nothing, right? But you're gonna set an autopsy for a couple of days, and you're gonna see it, smell it, wear it, and if you can go through that car wreck ain't nothing, right?
Yeah.
So all of our investigators do that, and then they're like, one of our new ones was a little bit wheezy the first day or so, and it was fine. They're fine, and they're doing a very, very good job. But my thinking is, since I have access to that ability, my thinking is, I'm throwing you in the fire because I don't want you freaking out on the first car wreck you see when there's blood on the ground. Let's just see the worst, and then everything else after that. It's nothing. If you watch a full evisceration and a decomp in a couple of days, ain't nothing else going to bother you.
right, exactly.
So throw them into the fire. Well, so this is very good. We're up on our time here, but I'm glad you kind of discussed this with us and kind of how this program works. And I'm sure there's a whole lot more stuff to it, but overall, I can see kind of how it works and how beneficial it is. And I think not only for us, but I think there's a lot of other listeners out there in agencies that would want to have some type of a program. It may not be exact, but some type of a program to help survivors to take the pressure off the investigators and be a little bit more specialized. So I'm glad we brought this topic up. It's very good. Last question. Do you hear back from the community, from victims' families, things like that this definitely is a good program?
Yes, we do. We definitely have a lot of families say, hey, thank you for being there and helping us. We have never experienced this level of service where we live. And I've heard from a lot of people, it's like, I wish we had something like this where we lived, because when my dad or my mom or my grandpa died, I had no idea what to do and nobody could give me the answers I needed. Yeah. So
I've heard that.
This, I think we've gotten a lot of good feedback on it, and it's always an evolving process.
Sure.
On how we can keep improving the program. We were the first program in the state of Colorado, to my knowledge, and I know a neighboring county, Park County, developed their own program shortly after we did, after seeing what it could do. I know Denver Medical Examiner's Office is now just standing up at a similar program with their office. I'm not sure about any other county, but I know we were probably the first one in the state of Colorado to have a program like this.
Yeah, that's fantastic. It's a great program, and I've heard of others around the country working in some form or fashion similar to that. And so it is becoming a thing. Years ago, I never would have thought it was a thing. We didn't think about it. We had victim advocate. And if it's at the sheriff's department and or the prosecutor's office, and so if we had a homicide or we had a victim of crime in some way, in our case it'd be homicide, we would refer to them, or the prosecutor would automatically refer if there's something like that. But nothing on like death investigations in general, just if crime.
Right.
And these have never came. I mean, ours here have never came out to a death scene, never even thought about it. Where yours started and then they stopped. We didn't even consider it. But now as time goes on, counties and agencies like you who have started something successful is now teaching the rest of us, we're behind the times and we need to start providing this. Because our investigators do, right? The investigators talk to families. The investigators give out information and give out pamphlets. But here's where I see the difference. The investigators are there to investigate the death. Now, yes, we have to talk to the family. We have to be compassionate. We have to be helpful, and we are. And we have to ask questions death investigation related,
right?
Just like their medical history and stuff like that. But we get so focused on that because that's our job. We're not focused as much on the family.
Right.
Where with this program, these people are just focused on the family and make the family feel supported. And leaves the investigator the ability to still interact with the family, but not, they don't have to worry about forgetting certain things that the advocate automatically knows. I can see how that team approach could be so much better for some of these investigations.
Yeah, and they help them with getting the resources that they need to keep working through this. Because the important thing to remember is our survivor support people aren't grief counselors. They're not psychologists or anything like that. They're there mainly for support, to help the families get through this initial period and then help them get the resources they need to work through their grief and everything that they're going through. They just get them those initial steps of, okay, what next? How do I get home? Can I go someplace else to stay? And just making sure that they're eating, drinking, and
sure,
maintaining.
And give them a list of support groups and counselors and things they can find help from.
Right. Yeah,
perfect. Well, Wendy, thank you so much. Always a pleasure having you on. I appreciate you bringing this information to us. We'll have you back on much, much more. So again, thank you for a wonderful conversation. I know people are going to gain from it a lot. So you have a great rest of your day, Wendy.
I will. Thank you. You too, Darren.
All right. I hope you enjoyed that conversation that Wendy and I had about survivor support programs. So if you don't have one, have you maybe thought now about putting one together? It's a very interesting concept. And as I said in the lead in, I plan on having one as well in my own county. We're doing the best we can now, but once we get our new facility built, where we're going to be a little bit more organized and we're not so fragmented, I think it's going to be better and easier for us to have an organized program like that. So we are working towards that. So if you have any questions about a survivor support program, you can certainly email us here. I will get that information to Wendy. She can answer your questions. She can give you some information about how their program works. She would be glad to talk to you through email or even jump on a phone call. Just let us know here. And of course, remember, if you need some online training, if you need some classroom training, go to our Academy page. There are gobs and gobs of training there that we can help you not only make you a better investigator, but also if you're needing ABMDI credits or any other type of continuing education credits, these courses work for most everything. So if you have questions, certainly reach out and our customer support team will be able to help you in any questions you may have. So thank you for joining me again for another episode. And as I always close the show, and I mean this sincerely, find a way to be a blessing to someone in your life, whether that be big or small. And above all, till next time, stay safe.
Thanks for listening to Coroner Talk, a DSPN media production. Visit our website at coronertalk.com. And be sure to like us on Facebook at facebook.com/coronertraining. 3617 1024 scene en route to morgue.